Achazyah Yisrael. Hayaneth Matei Shah Yehuda Tehila Yahweh Ben Yahweh. Good morning, family. This live here, because I want to just talk to the people a little bit, see how everybody's doing today, and bring up a few topics, unscripted, but really just pointing out this thing that is broadly looked over. When people think about the Bible, they think about a religion. And the Bible has never been religious. The Bible is not a religion tool. The Bible is a history book that's about a certain people and about their God, who is their Father, who made a covenant with them in order to keep them in the way in which they are obliged to act. Because when you start to look at the names in the Bible, it gives us hints of character, traits, nature, obligation, praises, downfalls, condemnations, restrictions, dietary, all of these things. It's all enwrapped. It's a philosophy that's enwrapped in a history book. That's what the Bible is. It is not a religious sacrament tool used to convert Gentiles into a religion. It's not. That's what the devil made it to be. That's why the Bible is all about the God of the Hebrews. And that's why Yahweh, who is the God of the Hebrews, even says that, in Exodus 4:22, Israel is my firstborn. Israel is my child. I am the father of the Hebrews. God, the father of our ancestors. Well, who is our ancestors? The Hebrews. Things like this. It's all about the Hebrews. This never once been about Christians. Christians is a Babylonian religion that was transferred over to the Roman Empire when that started, and then they started Christianity around the 3rd century BC. And it was all thanks to Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who was the ruler of Cos Greece Rome, who took 70 Hebrews, put them on an island in Cos Greece Rome, and had them transliterate the first 5 books of the Bible called the Septuagint Bible. It was from there it became to be used as a religious sacrament in order to cause confusion. That's why it tells us in 2 Kings chapter 17:29, how be it every nation made a god of their own. That means they had properly was able to take our book and start to reproduce it to a more successful rate in order to gain a stronger following after a deity which they made. And of course, if they made it, they will make it to look like them in order to cause further confusion for the people who the book is actually utilized for. They want our inheritance. That's why they work hard at keeping us in the dark as our nationality. That's why they took our language. That's why they hid our names. That's why they hide our history. If we was not that important, they would have never taken our names. They would have never hidden our language. They would have never made us forget where we came from. But you see, we hold a special placement. We are that we are that cornerstone that the builders rejected because they want our spot. That's why in Psalms chapter 2, it says, hey, the kings and the councils and the counselors, they all came together. And they all had a secret council about Yahweh's chosen people. They said, hey man, let's cast their lots for parts. Let's get their accords and cast them for parts. Let's separate them. Let's break their bands asunder. You don't do this to a regular schmuck on the street. You do this when you want to try to cheat and connive on your prey that you feel is they have something that you want, and that's rulership. It tells us, right? It tells us in the Bible that Genesis chapter 15, verse 13 and 14, as well as even verse 16. No one really brings up verse 16, but it says the Amorites are not yet full. So the Amorites is that Gentile nation in whom possession we shall be in for 400 years. When you look up Amorites, it'll tell you the Hebrew word is Martu. Martu means Westerners. When you look up the definition of Westerners, it tells you especially the Western United States. Where are we being held at for 400 years? In the United States. Where is the United States on the globe? In the West. So it's like, okay, we look at that. Okay, that connects. And then it says 400 years. Okay, well, we've been over here since 1555, just being in Florida. If you ever go to Florida, there's a statue in Augustine that declares the first slave was sold in St. Augustine in 1555. Earlier than that, we came here earlier in 1522 when they hit the Carolinas. That plantation failed, and then they didn't start coming back over here until 1555. And then the next big shipments of our people was in the 1600s. So when we look at that piece, okay, Deuteronomy 21:68 tells us that we will be brought back into Egypt again by ships. By ships. This is also declaring the Atlantic slave trade because Jerusalem, Palestine, E- Idumea, however you want to say it, is landlocked with Egypt. So what ships would they have taken? This is obviously talking about America. How? Well, Revelation chapter 11, verse 8 says that we will be in this place that's spiritually called Sodom in Egypt. Not literally called, but spiritually called Sodom in Egypt. So when we're looking at Deuteronomy 21:68, that says that we will be brought back into Egypt again with ships, it's talking about being brought to a place that resembles Egypt. Well, how does America resemble Egypt? Easy. The Memphis and the Nile splits the river, splits the country about 70% to the left or to the west coast, and about 30% to the east coast. Both rivers have a city called Memphis. Both Memphises, right, have pyramids off the rivers. You have in Memphis, Cairo, and Memphis, Tennessee. They both have pyramids off the rivers. Why do you think on the back of your American dollar, your American currency, there is an Egyptian pyramid? It's letting you know that you are in spiritual Egypt. Why do you think they have Sphinx, pyramids, and all other kind of Egyptian monuments set up like in Washington, the monument, that the pendulum that looks like I forget what it's called, but it's an Egyptian replica because you are in spiritual Egypt. So okay, that connects us again. And then Lamentations chapter 1 verse 3 tells us that Judah should be carried away captive, and we will be held in bondage by these heathens, right? A heathen is just someone who doesn't believe in your saying philosophy or something like that. So we're all heathen to some extent, you know. So I'm not being rude, just being I'm just being honest here, right? So we will be brought here by these heathens, and they're going to make fun of our Sabbaths, as it says in verse 7 of Lamentations chapter 1. They have made fun of our Sabbath by changing it and putting it on Sunday and locking it on a day. Our Sabbath rotates yearly. When you look up Sabbath and you look up week and you look up day and you look up the synonyms that it tells you and it points out, you will see that it accounts for a series and rotation. Then, when you look at Lamentations chapter 4, verse 8, it tells you that Israel, that their skin is blacker than coal. So we know that we're dealing with black pigmented people as well. So it's just with these Q facts, so that connects us again. Then it says that we will become bywords and proverbs. An account for this is Isaiah 65:15, where it states that the people who captured us, they shall give us their names as a curse. Well, guess what? Slavery, we were given slaves' names, which is what the slave owner names. We wasn't they didn't allow us to keep our names. They gave us slave owner names. So, when looking at all of this evidence here, it's clear to see that uh, the Bible is obviously talking about us and not by another people. It's about us. So, with that note being said, I just pray that y'all have the willpower to understand the truth and to accept the truth. Again, the Bible is not a religious book, but the Bible is a history book about a distinctive people whom Yahweh, which is the God of creation, has proclaimed to be his children from the beginning, who are under an obligation to follow his commandments. If not, they shall be punished. If they do, they shall be rewarded. And any nation that helps them will also be rewarded. That's why it states in Genesis chapter 12, verse 2 and 3, that Yahweh shall bless the nations that bless us, but he will also curse the nations that curses us. So with that being said, I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Praise Yahweh. And praise Yahweh being Yahweh. Can't wait to see you in the next one.